Daydream, an undefeated vignette. Written and performed by Justin Thomas James. The boy didn't want to do his assignment. He wanted to play outside with the other kids. He looked out his window and saw a world of endless possibilities. He saw an eagle soaring in the sky. He saw the other boys laughing and playing with wooden swords. On the vast sea, beyond the coastal cliffs, he saw a galleon, likely sent from a faraway land, drifting into harbor. Quintus sighed, his head resting on a hand as his mind wandered into a daydream. He was unaware of his other hand, tapping the parchment beneath him, a steady rhythm as he dotted his writing assignment with spots of ink. A list of Cherville's counties, lords, and ladies, the parchment read at the top of the page, by Quintus Lancaster, champion of the Maya, slayer of the Crimson Drake, wielder of the mighty Ragnarok spear, loving husband of Gratania the Beautiful, who shall love him forever also, captain of the Cobalt Guard, king of the realm. The list of impressive titles continued halfway down the page before devolving into a series of ink spots. He let out another sigh as he watched the eagle swoop suddenly, disappearing behind the castle's vast walls. "Is something wrong, young Quintus?" The thick dwarven accent came from a stout figure rocking in a chair by the hearth. The fireplace was not lit. The blazing sun was melting the snow away in one unseasonably hot day, and the two in the study needed no extra warmth. Quintus didn't reply. He was busy imagining himself as the eagle, diving down toward a massive grey tiger. Dru'alen would tell him that a bird that size would have no chance against such a beast, but Quintus thought maybe his tutor would be wrong. First, he would claw out the tiger's eyes. This would be the most dangerous part, and he would need to make sure he caught the giant cat by surprise. Then, with the animal blinded, he would bat his wings in front of its face, baiting it to give chase straight towards—
"Quintus!"
The deep voice snapped the boy's focus back to reality.
"You've been tapping away for minutes and it's given me a bloody headache."
The boy looked down at his parchment. Spots of ink covered the page, ruining what he had been writing. He'd need to start over. Great. He turned his attention to his tutor, who hadn't moved from his rocking chair all morning. "It's Master Quintus," he said to the old dwarf, emphasizing the middle word. Dru'alen had been his tutor for only a week, and Quintus already couldn't stand the sight of him. He was an ancient being, old even for a dwarf. He sat in his rocking chair all day, barking at him to read this and write that, in that irritating accent of his. He never even read anything that Quintus wrote. Instead, he made the boy read it out loud to him, and if Quintus tripped over a word or started reading "like a stone golem," as Dru'alen so often put it, he would stop the boy and make him start from the beginning again. Out of all the tutors that had been assigned to Quintus, Dru'alen was by far the worst. "I don't understand why I need to do this bull-piss assignment," Quintus said, glaring icily at the back of his tutor's head. "If someone had a spear up to my throat, I doubt that they would spare me if I could list all 21 counties. Besides, what's the point of learning them all if I'm never allowed to leave this hockshit tower?" From behind the window, a boy shouted a familiar war cry, and Quintus's head whipped towards the sound. He couldn't see the boys at this angle, but from what he could hear, it sounded like they were battling a horde of the undead. Lucky. The dwarf was silent for a moment, rocking back and forth as if he hadn't heard the boy. Finally, his gruff voice broke the silence.
"Ye are a pain in the arse, boy. You know that?"
Quintus spun his head back, a look of shock on his face. Nobody spoke to him like that. He wasn't technically royalty, but he was still an ocean's length more important than this codger.
"One of these days," the dwarf continued, "you're going to regret not reading these books and writing these assignments, and when that day comes, I hope you think back to this, to all the people who've tried to help you learn what you need to survive this world."
Quintus was speechless. He was basically royalty. He wasn't sure how his father would react if he heard his son's tutor was treating him like this. Surely Lord Lancaster would have Dru'alen removed from the court, maybe even exiled. "You can't," Quintus started, his eyes wide.
"Nay, shut it, boy!"
The desk shook at the resonant voice. The dwarf stopped rocking and was suddenly standing, facing the boy who still sat at the desk. Though the two were the same height, Dru'alen looked taller through sheer force of presence. Despite his age, he was an intimidating man. His thick bald head was scarred in several places, and his rough face was covered in a great grey beard that stretched to his waist. His nose was wide and uneven along its long bridge, where it had no doubt been broken several times. Most menacing were his eyes. They were a pure white. Though Quintus knew the old dwarf couldn't see a thing, he still felt his blood run cold as his tutor turned to face him. Despite his blindness, he was staring directly into the boy's eyes.
You don't want to learn. You wish to stay stupid. Fine.
He marched toward the boy, causing Quintus to shrink back in his chair.
If you insist on being dumb.
Dru'alen was toe-to-toe with the boy now, and he leaned forward, putting his face inches in front of his pupils. Quintus smelled something foul on the dwarf's breath, and he couldn't pull his head back far enough to escape it. His tutor finally continued, menace in his voice.
Then you'll need to learn to fight.
Quintus was at a loss for words. He had been begging his father to enroll him in the military training program, to train alongside his brothers, or half-brothers as they were. But old man Lancaster had always refused, always telling him his mother would not have approved. His mother, the elf, who was apparently dead and that he'd never met, was controlling his life and keeping him from his dreams. And here was Dru'alen, his blind, withering tutor, now saying he would teach him to fight.
Run downstairs, fetch 2 spears and bring them back here, lad.
Dru'alen finally leaned back, giving the boy space to stand.
And don't you dare be seen. Your father can't know about this. Got it?
The boy was stunned, his jaw agape.
Have you got it, boy?
The dwarf pressed. Quintus finally nodded quickly and ran to the door. As he crossed the room, he heard his old tutor sigh, then the creak of the desk chair as Dru'alen sat once again. As Quintus's hand clasped and turned the bronze door handle, a smile curved across his lips. He didn't know why the old dwarf was helping him, but he knew 3 things. He was going to get those spears, he was not going to be seen, and he was going to listen to every single word Dru'alen said from now on.